Hey, I'm Ann Steffen, and I'm on faculty at the University of Missouri St. Louis and a consultant affiliated with the Optimal Aging Center. And we're going to be walking through the overview of the Coping with Blues behavioral activation program that has been developed for use by Laguna Woods Village. So for today, this is a very brief orientation overview video that's really going to provide a very broad overview of the Coping with Blues program. I'll be making a couple of reminders about parts of each session that are going to be the same, and then I'll be guiding you to specific places of the Later Life Depression Clinician Guide where more information can be found if you have additional questions. So, as we just begin thinking about using this approach with Laguna Woods Village residents, I just want to point out a couple of things about perfectionism. And for all of us, myself included, when we are getting started using an approach or some intervention materials that are new to us, we usually feel awkward. It feels kind of stilted. We may be unsure and feel a little tentative about things, and that's completely normal, right? And so, my experience, at least for myself and for others that I am involved in their training, is that it usually takes using materials with 2 to 3 clients for the average therapist to feel comfortable and confident with the materials. And we've intentionally developed all the later life depression workbook materials to make them really clinician friendly. So all of the main points, the questions to engage in discussion with clients with are already provided on those learn page and practice forums. So there's very, very little that you're expected to remember without having those materials as resources for yourself. And, the best way for all of us to learn how to do an intervention is to actually use it with clients. So I'm going to encourage you to just get started and to not worry about doing things just right or perfectly, but just roll up your sleeves and start using the materials with some clients, and you'll be learning also along the way with what works for you and what works for the specific residents with whom you're working. So these 8 sessions of behavioral activation from the Later Life Depression workbook, with a note that there may be some very, very high functioning and sort of mild depression cases that could do well with just 6. And we've really thought of these in terms of individuals who have PHQ-9 scores between the ranges of 10 and 19 with or without anxiety, and those who are in that PHQ-9 range of 5 to 9 could potentially be placed on a watch list where you're checking in on a monthly basis and perhaps doing a reassessment of the PHQ-9. And certainly we believe that those who have more severe forms of depression, as indicated by PHQ-9 scores above 19, would really be expected to not do particularly well with this very brief structured approach, and that we would recommend that they are referred out for more traditional weekly psychotherapy that can be administered in a more intensive way. So just, as we think about why behavioral activation, this approach is based on the biopsychosocial model with an understanding that our physical and social environments are really important. They provide the context in which we are then engaging with our thoughts and our behaviors and our feelings and our biology, our physiology, and that those arrows are all bidirectional. And for a lot of individuals who have depression, one of the first most research-supported, evidence-based practices that we can do is behavioral activation, because early attention to just activating them more in their daily lives can go a long way to reducing depressive symptoms and improving quality of life. So we know from a lot of research and a lot of work over decades is that depression involves a ever increasing downward spiral of feeling low, doing less, which increases the depression, and then the inactivity just continues to spiral down. And so behavioral activation is really meant to both stop that downward spiral and begin to reverse the trends. And there's more information about this approach in this model in the clinician guide. So behavioral activation is really intended to break that vicious cycle and especially help individuals learn that daily activities affect our mood, and that all of us, including folks who are struggling with very real life circumstances, with very real, perhaps chronic health issues or experiences of loss, still do have some control over their daily activities, and thus they have some ability to control some facets of their mood. So this is a slide that just provides a really big overview of these 8 sessions. And sessions 1 and 2 are orientation and relationship forming. I'll talk more about each one of these later on. Sessions 2 and 3 begin with psychoeducation regarding emotions. And then sessions 4 onward, 4 through 8, are really the rolling up the sleeves and getting active with behavioral activation. And you'll see in particular as I walk through these that we have some material that's completely duplicated across sessions 4 and 5. Those are really covering the same material. Repetition is so key for so many individuals, and that's also true for sessions 6 and 7. So to this overview video, I'm going to be providing 6 additional very brief overview videos that really walk through each session and talk about the components of the session. I'll be highlighting the learn and practice forms that are involved. I'll be providing some reminders on session pacing and relationship therapeutic alliance developing, and also provide just some tips for troubleshooting and reminders of where to find things in the clinician's guide if you have additional suggestions or questions. And so in session 1, you'll see that this is the first session in which we're having a dialogue surrounding the residents' past experiences with depression, helping them sort of understand how depression is being manifested in their current life. We introduce and really start off with a strong emphasis on personal values and personal strengths, and we're really spending some time attending to forming that collaborative relationship. And you see that there are a handful of learn and practice forms that are associated with that. And each session, when there's bonus pages, those are pages in which high-functioning clients who are just all in and very enthusiastic and really engaged in the process, that you can certainly move forward and include those. But for the average resident or someone who's a little bit more tentative or someone who's really at a lower level of functioning or more depressed, that, we would sort of hold off. We'd still provide those pages, but we wouldn't spend much time instructing them. And we'd say, these are extra. You're welcome to look at them, but you don't have to worry about them if that feels overwhelming to you. I'll be talking about this in each of the individual session videos. In session 2, we're doing some basic psychoeducation about emotions, and we are especially debunking the societal myth of catharsis, right? The talking about what is upsetting the resident is going to be sufficient to lowering their depression. We're helping to develop some shared language for how each resident describes their negative and positive moods so that we can map onto that and that we can use the same language that they're using for their emotional experiences. And we're continuing to focus on that collaborative relationship. And you see here as well that we have 2 bonus pages in addition to the basic psychoeducation regarding emotions, learn and practice forums. Then in session 3, we're continuing to focus on emotional literacy, and we're then beginning to work specifically on fostering attention and savoring of positive emotional experiences. And you'll have one form in particular that is meant to be a practice form to help them begin to reflect on a daily basis the positive emotions that they're experiencing, so that they're not overly focused on the negative. And then you see that there's another bonus page here that some residents may like to use, but is not essential. Sessions 4 and 5 are really where we jump in and begin with behavioral activation. So there's some basic psychoeducation about how daily activities, especially positive activities, impact our mood. We begin to introduce the idea of positive activities as anything that is rewarding, valued, meaningful in their life, big and little, and begin to help them develop a list of their positive activities that will be growing over time, and that do for, learn, and 5, and the do 2 and 3 practice, which is the first steps, which is a beginning of a daily monitoring of their activities and mood to help them increase their awareness of what their current life is, what's going on and what isn't going on in their current life. And we're making the recommendation that, again, in sessions 4 and 5, you're just expecting that this information is going to need to be repeated, and that at some point over sessions 4 and 5, it'd be a good time to repeat an assessment to the PHQ-9. Then again, session 6 and 7 is more attention on behavioral activation. Again, these same materials to be repeated across these 2 sessions, where we're beginning to continue to craft and cultivate a list of positive activities that are really meaningful and personally relevant for them, and then beginning to help them plan for, schedule, and proactively engage in specific positive activities. And again, at some points in session 6 or 7, may be an appropriate time to get a new PHQ-9 score that's current for them. Then session 8 is the last session, and in the session you definitely want to plan on a PHQ-9 score. You're continuing, you're introducing this as a program that was meant to help them get it started, but now it's on them to continue to work on this on their own. So they're continuing to refine their lists. You're spending some time in the session doing some troubleshooting and some problem solving with them for things that may be getting in the way of positive activities, and then you're providing a wrap up and a goodbye for the work that you've done with each other. So additional discussion and training on behavioral activation is available in that session 3 for the culturally responsive CBT program that we offered in the fall of 2021 through the E4 Center. So I've provided the link and the reminder for that video. And at the Optimal Aging Center, and we're sharing with all the clinicians at Laguna Woods Village, that we have these 3 tip sheets of reminders of some of the basic adaptations and suggestions that we have for working with older adults in a clinically effective manner. So that's all for today. I'm really looking forward to our future group consultation sessions together.